Hi. So today we're covering competency matrix and mapping. If you remember in the first session, we covered what competencies are, different types, what is the purpose, and what is the difference when we say skill and competencies. We've already covered that. And today we'll be talking about the matrix and the mapping. Competency matrix is actually a list of competencies that an organization identifies. So if you picture it, it is a grid that visualizes the required available skills and competencies in a team. I'll show you a sample also, and that would make the picture more clearer. First, let's understand that it is something which is very handy, right? Why is it handy? Because it is bringing the most out of your internal talent. And to quickly and easily identify what are the actual needs of your workforce. It defines the standards for recruitment and selection. It also makes a base for performance evaluation and your employee behavior standards. So a competency matrix is basically a list of skills or the behavior or a combination of that. It has an individual name, and then it indicates the performance. So against that individual and against those competencies, you are marking on development whether this competency is for this person or this job role or not, whether this person has some knowledge or is an expert in that. So you are writing an update on the competencies, the behavior, the knowledge, the skills that an individual has in this matrix. To build a competency matrix, understanding the competencies, the job role, individual, for the real world application is important. It is important, especially for the managers, to understand which employee has no knowledge or nil update on these competencies. What is the set of employees which needs required knowledge? So when a manager understands or has an understanding at this level for his team, the development and growth in the organization moves faster. And to support this, tools like Matrix are designed. A training or a competency matrix is a tool used to document and compare the required competency for a position with the current skill level of the employees performing any particular role. So basically, we're using these matrix as a gap analysis. We're identifying where you have critical training needs and where and how we can develop people. And it is a perfect, best tool to be used in succession planning. Succession planning is when today we are planning and designing and preparing for future job roles. We are preparing this individual, an employee, for a future job role. Right? So this matrix helps the organization in a lot of ways. A, it provides a comprehensive view of the skills and behaviors needed. Also, it aids in managing the training budget because obviously it is identifying the skill gaps across the organization. It assists with planning by helping the organization to identify and target new skills, areas that might be needed for a long term for that job role or for that employee. It also helps manager with development planning by providing a framework of common skills and required. How do we create this competency matrix? Specialized and experts play an important role, but just to give you an understanding of how we do it, we first list the key roles in an organization. What are the important roles that supports the business? Then we list the competencies which are required for each role. Then we list the names of each individual for these roles. The next step is to determine how you want to code the matrix to indicate skill level, training needs. Now, this is the designing part. So you see how it works for you so that in one glance, it is clear where is the employee standing, right? The next step is to fill out the matrix for each person using your coding system to indicate the current skills or the skill gaps. And then we look for pattern, opportunities and area of need. So if there is a skill gap, we understand that there is training and development required. So if you see this sample sheet, on the left-hand side are the staff names, then there are functions and their skills level. So if you see the skills level in maintenance, the should be this much, the actuals are this much, and training plan is this much. And the skills are on the top: basic, technical, management, computer, linguistic, and behavioral. And then they have further divided them, right? So in a way, what we are doing is we are capturing the whole essence of where an individual stand against each competency. So if you see the coding on the left-hand side top where training is written, it says, if there is a red code, it means training identified. If there is a yellow code, it means training is planned. And so they've given different color coding, right? And if you see these blue small bars, the square shape, on the top, you'll see if there is one square. It says the employee has a basic knowledge and can do the task independently at a basic level. But if they have 3 squares, the employee has the skill for independent and quantitative task completion and can effectively pass on the knowledge further. So he's at an expert level, right? Isn't this a beautiful sheet which gives you a complete picture of all your employees at different levels of competencies? Moving on. Competency mapping, on the other hand, is actually a process of attaching competencies to the job roles. It is the process of identifying a specific skill, knowledge, abilities, and behaviors required to operate effectively in a very specific profession or a job position. Competency maps, they are often referred as either a competency profile or a skill profiles. So this is a process that helps identify the key competency for any particular position in any organization, right? Or we can use the same key competencies for using it for training, recruitment, performance management, and succession planning. This identifies an individual strength and weaknesses. And when an employee understands his own weakness and strength against the job role, it becomes easier for him to grow and develop. The aim is to enable the person to better understand himself or herself and to point out where the career development efforts needs to be directed. This is how a competency mapping sample looks like. So if you see all the skills, functional, business, leadership, competencies, and then they're further divided into competencies, and then they've given color coding. Dark blue is more improvement required, purple says improvement required, and the light blue says less improvement required. So this gives a complete clarity on how and where we can develop our employees. The usage of competency mapping. If we can't define competencies, then we can't measure them. And if we can't measure it, the success of our employees is not being captured. We won't understand who is a better performer, who needs to be developed, who needs to be promoted, or who is actually struggling with the role. So competency development helps us to define and measure the success of each role. It helps us to recruit higher quality staff. It helps us to set expectation for every new employee. It helps us to provide a competency framework with which to evaluate performance. It helps us to discover gaps in competencies and better train to fill those gaps. And it helps us to prepare the employees for better future performances. Now, how do we do the competency profiling? Right? Competency profiling is basically a process of identifying, defining, and assessing those competencies, which is believed to lead to a higher employee performance in a very particular job within the context of your business. The aim of this profiling is to identify the skills, knowledge, and abilities which are required to perform that job, that role, or a shared function. Right? Now, how is this competency profiling helping us? It is helping us by identifying and defining each position and how well we can match up candidates for this job role. Because here we are defining the job and we're defining the employee. Advantage includes improved job performance, better identification of training requirements, better results from recruiting, and easier succession planning. This chart is self-explanatory, so I'll move on. How do we ensure that competencies and mapping is done in the best possible way? So there are different approaches and ways to do it. The first is assessment center. Now this assessment center involves a team of experts which on various designed exercises and different activities does their observation and evaluate performances and growth of the potential candidate required for a specific job attributes. And then they submit their observations and their performances for this employee, and based on that report, actions are taken. The other approach can be personal interviews, where a detailed information draft is set and a very in-depth skills, attribute, behavior, job-related tasks are defined. An interview is taken on those behalf. So this interview not only gives a clarity on what are the details that are required to perform a job, but also gives us complete clarity on candidates, motivational level, what is the outlook, what is the understanding of the job role. The other approach can be through a questionnaire. बोलो. Critical incident techniques are when you're using data to gather and analyze to identify a job specific behaviors that influences the success or failure of an individual or a collective business operation for performing a very certain job. So here you are giving exceptional examples of accomplishment or a failure. So you take that as your sample bars, you collect it through interviews or questionnaire, and then based on the observation, you identify which person is closer to the exceptional performance or the failure performance. So the pattern of performance of gap and strengths gets highlighted. Psychometric test is another approach to do it. Psychometric test provides a consistent approach to measuring and quantifying a sample behavior. The two main types of psychometric assessments are your aptitude and your achievement test. Aptitude tests are used to identify natural inclination in a very specific area. Achievement test measures the level of proficiency of an individual, such as how good are you in maths, the language skills, ability to reason, your mental ability, right? So these are different approaches that helps us to map the competencies. Right. Now, competency mapping is determining us the extent to which the various competencies related to a job are possessed by a job holder. So here, an HR expert is identifying and listing out the competencies that are most relevant and significant to carry out job in a very effective manner. So this process of identifying the gap between what is expected, what are the actual competencies are basically competency mapping. What are the gaps? Where we need to understand whether this employee is going good, needs training, needs promotion, or if the gap is high, do we need to train him, develop him? The organization have to identify the critical basic competencies required for individual employees in order to deliver the best in the organization. So this is designed to consistently measure and assess an individual and a group performance as it relates to the expectations of the organization and its customers. So it is used to identify the key attributes, your knowledge, skills, and behavior. And these three are the main ones which are required to perform effectively in a job or in any identified process. Now, if you see this, competency mapping, if you're using it as an effective tool for HR activities, what is it doing for us? It is playing a very vital role, especially for all the HRM system and the function. It is analyzing the job. So there is this job analysis. It is helping us in recruitment, performance appraisals, promotions, transfers, trainings, development programs, and succession planning. Right? So in a way, through competency mapping, what are we doing? We're modifying the styles of working of the employee. We are supporting with resources and programs to help them grow and excel. How are these competencies helping us at work? We've understood that through different slides that A, if the competencies are well defined, it can foster a very strong corporate culture. Teams can be aligned, right? So this is what happens when we are talking about competencies planning. So if you see this, We are talking about a very strong corporate culture. Second, we're talking about how individual understand where he stands and where he needs to go. Third, the manager understand and is aligned with the team in terms of the development. And fourth, it is easy to differentiate a high performer and a low performer through these. So if competencies are well explained and employees are trained well on that, it helps to ensure a consistent performance for all the employees. People and communication skills are examples of core competencies. So specify your interpersonal communication skills in a manner that indicates that you'd be a great employee if hired for the type of job you hope to obtain. So if you see this diagram, the vision, mission, core values, and strategies of the organization, the objective and the operational plans. Based on this, the competencies are the hard strategies. So in a way, what we are doing through competency mapping, competencies are helping us to recruit better, to select better, to train and develop in the right gap analysis for the right thing, to assess their performance better, to reward better, to do the career and succession planning in a better way, and to appreciate, promote, and reward employees in a better manner. Right? More or less, nowadays, every organization, small, medium, large, is going into competencies, defining them, because it gives a very smooth and a clear understanding of what different job roles are, how employee needs to perform, and it becomes easy for the organization and management to assess them. Business and managing business is a very complex thing, right? And in order to make it a little smooth and to make it a uniform, competency matrix mapping and designing and defining of competencies helps in a very big way. Whenever we are talking about competencies, we're always talking about the skills, knowledge, behaviors, and different traits which are hidden. So if we understand what are the kind of competencies required for a job, it becomes easy to select the right kind of candidate against those competencies. And in case we find a little difference in the level of competencies, we can always fill and bring them up by training and development. So this is how competency mapping and matrix helps any organization. If you have any questions, any queries, do message me and we'll connect on a call. Thank you.